Welcome to the session. I hope you all had a great first day of this awesome conference. In this session, we are talking about fabric8, which are Java developer tools and microservices on top of Kubernetes and OpenShift. But before we are talking about fabric8, we have to talk about Docker, of course. Docker is, I think it's omnipresent here in this conference, and you must have been living under a stone if you didn't heard about Docker in the last year. But Docker is only the beginning. So there started some sort of gold rush around Docker, and there are now lots of other tools and features which add value on top of Docker. There are orchestration things like Kubernetes or Mesos. There are platform as a service platforms like OpenShift or Days. In this talk, I'm going to concentrate on a certain stack. This is Docker as the basis, as a container platform, which allows you to operate Linux containers. On top of Docker, there's Kubernetes, which can orchestrate a lot of Docker hosts. And finally, on top of Kubernetes, again, there's OpenShift v3, which allows you to, which adds, again, some more values to make Kubernetes to a real platform as a service. So this goes from bottom to top. I will introduce each of these technologies a bit, except of Docker, because I assume that everybody knows more or less what Docker is, otherwise they weren't here. But the question, of course, is what is fabric8? Probably most of you didn't hear much about fabric8 yet. It's a so in this incarnation, it's a quite young project. And the question is fabric8 now something which is on top of OpenShift, or where does it stand in this diagram? Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, fabric8 is something more orthogonal to everything. So fabric8 has some stuff for Docker itself. It knows how to build Docker images. It knows how to deploy and manage Kubernetes objects, and has also some special features for OpenShift. So it's more or less at the side of this diagram. Okay, as I said, I won't talk much about Docker, but except that, okay, Docker is this OS level virtualization. In contrast to traditional virtual machine virtualization, it's much more lightweight and allows you to utilize much more resources. Then I'm just, okay, let's go to the next slide the next slide is just a short introduction about myself. I'm a software engineer at Red Hat. I'm doing open source. I'm working also in this fabric8 team, or in the iPaaS team, as it is called at Red Hat, where we are working on fabric8. But I'm also author of other open source software like Jelokia, which is a JMX HTTP bridge, and also a Docker Maven plugin, which is often used also in the context of fabric8, but can, of course, used outside of fabric8, simply for creating and running Docker images and containers. Okay, now to Kubernetes. I hope you all, or most of you, were in the hands-on lab or in the university sessions from Aaron. I don't know, Aaron, are you here? Somewhere now. So this is, there are much better, much more knowledgeable people who can tell you more about Kubernetes. And I give you the brief concept of Kubernetes in a very short crash course. Kubernetes itself, this is an architectural overview of Kubernetes. There is a certain Kubernetes master, which manages multiple Kubernetes nodes. So what is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is an orchestration tool for Docker containers, which means that you Kubernetes is responsible for selecting, for scheduling images, containers to run on certain nodes. It is, insofar it's not so that classical orchestration tool where you say, okay, put this on this node. It's a declarative orchestration tool, so you say what desired state you wish to have, so how many instances of a certain container you want to have. And Kubernetes takes care to create, to scale up, or even scale down if you simply reduce the number of replicas. So it's in some sense it's self-healing. So when some sort of container is dying, then it will start a new one for you. And what is also special about Kubernetes is, or what is somewhat outstanding feature is that it has service discovery, very easy to use service discovery included, where you simply can reference other services, so other containers from over environment variables. So I just have talked a little about services, and even you see here some things like pods. Is a vocabulary now of Kubernetes, and I think if you know these 4 terms, you mostly know maybe 80% of Kubernetes. So it's a very easy concept to grasp. So pods, what are pods? Pods is a collection of 1 or more Docker containers. The special thing about pods is that they have a single IP address, and all the containers within the pod share the same network space, which means that they have the same port space. And in Kubernetes, you don't have the normal mapping of dynamic ports as you have if you use Docker. If you have used multiple Docker containers on the same host in a traditional way, you have the Docker host itself has a single IP, but it has to distribute the ports over all the containers there. So if you have 2 Tomcats which are running on port 8080, to the outside they must have different ports. This is different in Kubernetes, where each pod gets an extra IP address. And also each pod can carry 1 or more labels, which are nothing more than key value pairs. And it's not only for pods. So every Kubernetes object can carry labels, and labels are used to group pods, for example. And a replication controller is responsible for taking care about pods. So the replication controller is in fact exactly this part of Kubernetes which is responsible for the self-healing thing. So you give the replication controller a template how a pod should look like, and then say, replication controller, please create maybe 2 or 3 of these pods. And if and the replication controller knows, because of the template, how it should create the pods. So you have a replication controller, you have the pods, and how can you now access the pods from the outside? Therefore, you can use services. Services themselves are nothing more than a proxy to a collection of pods. Each service has also a dedicated IP address, and you go through the service from the outside, and the service distributes then the request which comes into any of the pods he is responsible for. How does a service get its pods? Yes, it's quite easy because it's simply a query on labels. So you have a selector on labels, and you say, okay, a pod with selector app equals Redis, for example, then gets that any pod which carries these labels will be selected with this selector. Okay, this is the Kubernetes concepts, but again, it's really only a crash course. There are better people Kubernetes play, but what I want to show is how these Kubernetes objects are specified typically. There are 2 variants. Normally, one you can do it in JSON or you can do it in YAML. Here's a JSON example. You see it's quite verbose. You see these objects are very somewhat generic, so you have a kind or type, which is different, of course, for replication controller and for pods. And then this object itself has then also different properties. For example, the replication controller has a template property which describes the pod this replication controller should create. Okay, just want to say to write this by hand can be done, but it gets long quite fast. Okay, this was now Kubernetes. The next level on this stack is OpenShift, and OpenShift v3 especially. First, some words on the history of OpenShift. You have OpenShift started in 2011 as a platform as a service from Red Hat. There exist 3 variants of OpenShift. So one is the online variant, where you simply can create an account and you can connect to the service, and you can create your application there. Then there is OpenShift Enterprise, which you can install locally in-house, and you get you have to buy a subscription for that one, and you can get the community upstream version with OpenShift Origin, which is simply really the newest development version, where an enterprise is really there's support. It is really the software versions fit together, so it's more enterprisey. That's also why they name it like this. The special thing here is that OpenShift v3 is completely different than OpenShift v2. It's a complete rewrite on top of Kubernetes. So everything below in OpenShift v3 is Kubernetes. And OpenShift itself adds some stuff on top of Kubernetes. Kubernetes can be said to be a container as a service. So it's the task for OpenShift is to create and manage containers over multiple nodes. And OpenShift adds the build aspect more or less to this picture in order to provide a complete platform as a service. So OpenShift knows how it gets your source code into executable images. It knows how to deploy them, how to do rolling updates. It has also an internal registry which can be used to pull your images into, and also some routing to the external thing which can be used for OpenShift. So it's here. Yes, another special feature is that it has application templates which groups certain Kubernetes objects to a group, and we see in the next slide an example of such an application template. You have security, you have multi-tenancy, those that you can run multiple different teams and user concurrently on the same installation, and it has also an own dedicated management UI. Templates look like this, so it's again in kind. So here you can also see how easily the Kubernetes REST API can be extended. So all these objects, what you see here, in order to create them or to manage them, you go over a REST API. And Kubernetes itself has extension points like this kind, where you simply can use kinds on your own to extend the API itself. Template is nothing more. You see below this items array, which holds simply a set of other Kubernetes objects which will be created if you apply this template. These items can have placeholders, and the placeholders are defined in this parameter section. What you can then do on the UI is simply to fill in values for these placeholders, which then gets filled into the template. So it's quite easy. It's also a very easy concept. And this is what you see if you go to OpenShift and create a template which consists maybe of multiple pods, like, for example, if you have Elasticsearch and Kibana together as one application, you would use a template for that. Okay, now this was a more or less long intro, but it's important to set the context for Fabric8. What is now Fabric8? So Fabric8 itself has also a history. It started all with Fuse ESB, which is more or less a Camel with something on top of it. This was an open source integration platform by a company called FuseSource. FuseSource had also a commercial product called Fabric. This was an extension to manage many ESBs. So ESB so if you want to take an analogy, it's more or less like a Docker container, whereas many ESBs are more or less this orchestration thing. In 2012, Red Hat acquired FuseSource, and there was some rebranding. So Fuse ESB became JBoss Fuse, and Fabric, this closed open source software, became Fabric8, which is now open source and which I'm going to show you in a minute. Then one has also distinguished between two versions of Fabric8. So there's Fabric8 1X, which is more or less also a direct evolution of this original Fabric software. This one is based on Zookeeper for all this orchestration needs, like distributed configuration and so on. And Zookeeper gave you a central view of the system. But then the Fabric8 team, or the team behind Fabric8, realized that there are really the new tools around Docker emerged, which simply make things much easier. So one could throw away a lot of this infrastructural code, and now Fabric8 itself does similar thing like Fabric8 1, but in that case on top of Kubernetes. Okay, Fabric8 is really some sort of a patchwork. There is not really a fixed product or something which you say, okay, I download Fabric8 and then I say start Fabric8. There are multiple different themes. I will give you an overview of that one, and after that I hope I can give you a demo if everything works fine. First of all, there's DevOps, which provides you a set of microservices for creating a continuous delivery pipeline and continuous integration. So DevOps is really a set of microservices like Jenkins is there, so we'll see that in a minute. And they are all interconnected so that you can very easily with one button, with one push on a button, you can create your whole continuous delivery setup scenario for your application. Then there are management tools. There is a management console UI, which allows you also to inspect things. There are a lot of quick starts, which really enables you to start up not only fabric8, but also a complete Kubernetes and OpenShift installation with one simple step. There is integration, platform as a service. This I stands for integration, which is also again a set of microservices, which play well together. And finally, there are a lot of tools for handling all this more or less tedious stuff for creating configuration files, like we have seen just before. Okay, now just for every one slide for every point. DevOps is centered around Jenkins. Jenkins is the continuous integration server, which is responsible for doing all your builds. And this images which come with this DevOps part allows you to realize a continuous delivery pipeline. And this continuous delivery pipeline is again based on something, another add-on of Jenkins, on the Jenkins workflow plugin. So fabric8 delivers reusable Jenkins workflow library, which is nothing more as a set of groovy DSL files. So you can define your complete Jenkins flow, so what you are building, where you get your Maven, what you are doing, how to increase the version numbers and so forth, directly into an own groovy DSL. And fabric8 comes with a set for example, for setting a 3-stage continuous delivery pipeline where you have a canary release, testing stage, staging stage, and then the production stage. And this hopefully I can show you then in the demo. What the good thing is about this of the set of microservices that you can really pick and choose what you want to do. For example, you can there's a microservice where you can Devoxx, which uses Devoxx as a Git repository, so you can simply check in all your source code. There's Nexus as a Maven repository which you connect to this DevOps. You can use SonarQube for measuring code quality. You have also interesting. You have a chat integration with Hubbard, so you can set up your chat rooms for getting not only build notifications, but also, for example, to doing manual or human approval of certain test stages. And finally, there's also a very nice service which is called Chaos Monkey, of course inspired by Netflix Symbian Army, which is simply a resilience tester. So it's a service which simply kills other services in your cluster. And then hopefully, if Kubernetes is really self-healing, then everything works fine. And if you are logged into the chat room, then you get also very nice animated GIFs for any of dancing monkeys and so on for any killed pod. Okay, then there's the management part, which is where you have the fabric8 management console. This we will see in a minute. Then there are certain predefined services for logging and metrics, which you simply can connect to your Kubernetes nodes to get information about that one. Very important, and this is so. If I have to give out one single message from this talk, is that it's really easy to try out fabric8. So there is a full-featured Vagrant file, which you simply use. So if you know Vagrant, you have this Vagrant file which builds up a virtual machine in a scripted way, and within this virtual machine you have not only fabric8 installed, but of course an OpenShift, a single node cluster with OpenShift and Kubernetes on top of it. And this is really a matter of minutes to set this up. There's a small binary, it's called Go Fabric8, which installs all these services I just mentioned. So you have this Jenkins, this DevOps stuff, and also this Chaos Monkey, which comes as a service. This installed as Kubernetes and OpenShift objects within this installation, so that you can select it from the UI to create a new application from these templates. And then, last but not least, there's a whole set, let's say 10 to 20 quick start projects, which you can use as a starting point for your own applications, which you want to deploy on Kubernetes or OpenShift. These sample projects are also available as archetypes. So you can simply really create as Maven archetypes, so to say. Okay, then there's iPaaS, is integration as a platform services. So you have tooling all around Camel. As you know, this view stuff is all about this, all about camels. You have visualization of camel routes and so forth. There's a fabric8MQ, which is also a pre-factored messaging service where you automatically can detect when you need more ActiveMQ brokers or not. And there's also integration of API management, which allows you to apply quotas, rate limiting, security, and other stuff on your APIs or the REST APIs which you expose as Kubernetes services. So you can select your Kubernetes service and say, okay, I want to apply a certain plan. It's called in API man, that you say, okay, I want this quote, this service only is consumed with 1,000 requests per minute or so. Okay, we have tooling, which consists of Maven plugins, which allow you to create this deployment descriptors I showed you from the build information, which you have in the POM XML. It allows you to create Docker images, but also some other minor tasks like creating OpenShift routes or other stuff for services. There's also a Kubernetes remote API, it's a Java API, which you can use to create all these Kubernetes objects programmatically from your Java applications. There's a Kubernetes Aquilian extension. There's a CDI extension for service injection. As I said, service discovery is performed by Kubernetes themselves, and this extension allows you via CDI to obtain the service references. And there's a whole set of JBoss Forge add-ons to create all of this project. So you see there's a whole bunch of things going on. But now let's have just a look in the demo. What I have here now, because this takes more than 10 minutes, I have just a short screencast started. This is a canonical site for getting, so it was a little bit fast, for getting this fabric8 installer. This is this vagrant file, which I just mentioned. You simply go, as I said, clone the repository, and then simply do a vagrant up, and you're done after 10 minutes or so. Okay, so this we will skip here. So, okay. So the next sim, there's also a video, but I hope that I can show it you live. What I now want to show you is this DevOps. So it's a little bit small. I have to. Okay. So this, what you see here is now this management console from fabric8. fabric8 distinguishes between several perspectives. So there's a management perspective to look at the running pods and Kubernetes objects, and there's a development perspective. What we want to do now is to create a new project. We go here into this, so we have to connect. So what I've already have done before is to set up this continuous delivery applications pipeline. That works, so I use that one. Then I have the password, Devoxx let's take that. Okay, and then sign in. Then we have several, a little bit smaller. You have several possibilities how you can create this project. We are doing it via wizard, and let's call it Camel in that case. Then you can choose from a certain archetype. These are these quick start I mentioned previously in one of the former slides. So they are all available here. So we want to use a Camel quick start, which is simply a very simple Camel. So I want the CDI Camel. Let's use that way. Okay, this archetype. So now, what is okay? Now you choose some sort of Docker base image, which is a Java. So Java base image also provided by fabric8. We use in that case that with 1.2.0. You can add some other parameters. You can give it an icon and so forth. So now let's create. Okay. In the final step, you now select this Jenkins workflow thing. So you can select from a lot of predefined build scripts or Jenkins DSL, so for our example, we're using that one. You can copy over this Groovy script directly into the project and adapt it to your needs, if you like. You could add now here some chat rooms and so this is a connection to this chat room, for example, for human approvals, or you could connect an issue tracker, or even so there's also a connection to Garrett as code review as for microservice. So this now takes a little bit. Now I hope that it works. Okay, has been done. What now has been created is that you will see here now 2 environments which has been created for your project Camel in that case. So you have a testing environment, a staging environment, and a production environment, which translates directly into Kubernetes namespaces or OpenShift projects. So these are really namespaces. We can have a look into the into this overview. No. So didn't work. Could be. Let me see. Development. There's our Camel thing. Okay, might take a little bit until everything is fired up. In the meantime, I can show you something a little bit fun for okay, development, manage. So what you see here is a lot of all the services running here, and everything, by the way, is running here on this Vagrant VM machine, which you can download, which I've showed you in the previous team class. Here's a cool thing that you can use angry pods, which is something like this resilience tester, which is not in that way, not automatically, but you can now go through and kill your own pods if you. Oh no, I'm tired myself. So what you can do here is simply to kill the pods, and they will be respawned in that case. So. Because you have to wait quite often until things start. This is not something which is due to Fabric8, but okay. So I have to go back. Now let's see whether, okay, what you see here now that there are really new namespaces has been created for different stages. Now let's go to this, sorry, I have to go back to this, my project. Okay, now it's, okay, I have to make it a little bit smaller again. What you see here now that you have really, okay, it is quite advanced already. So what has happened? The CD delivery pipeline has detected that there has been a new project, or has an initial commit. So what it fires up, it goes through this Groovy DSL for creating various steps. There has been a release created, the integration tests. You always can go to this to the Jenkins jobs here. What you see again, I have to make it a little bit. Oops, sorry. Wrong direction. Okay, this is the Jenkins application which has been created, and what we now need to do is, in that case, we have to do an approval, a manual approval, for this latest staging. In the last step before going to production, sorry. This can be also done via chat or via other means. So you see here that there's no chat defined yet, so we go simply here by proceed and go back to our view. The approve has happened, and now you have this promote step, which installs this everything in production. You see here all this different installation. Now let's have a look in the production view. This is in that case we have here our Camel application. We can look at the pods. We have this pod is created in this production environment, and the nice thing is that you can now simply directly jump into this Camel pod by simply going to the link, and what you now get is really a deep inspection within this Java application. You can here have a visualization of your Camel routes, and you also see how it runs, how many messages has been transmitted through this pipeline. And yeah, what you see here is simply this hot.io console. You probably heard about it. This is also a general purpose console for managing or monitoring the Java applications in combination with Jalokia. Okay, now let's go back. I have 1 last minute left. So now let's maybe, again, go to the project. I can have a look in the source. What you see here, for example, is this Jenkins workflow, which I mentioned, so there's different stages. And okay, if I would now create a new check-in, so change something in the source code, then you will see then that the pipeline starts again, and you see a rolling upgrade between these different pods. For example, then what happened there is simply that the old pod is scaled down to 0, whereas the new pod is scaled up to 1. Of course, with 1 and 0, it's not so fantastic. But if you use multiple scales, you have really a smooth rolling upgrade in that case. Okay, so that was for the demo. So to sum up, no, just next thing. Okay, to summarize, I hope I could show you that fabric8 adds a lot of new microservices and Java tooling to Docker with Kubernetes and OpenShift. There are many modules, so it's not a single fabric8 product in that case. And although there are still some loose ends, and it's not everything is working perfectly, but it's quite easy to try it out yourself. So you get a lot of support in our ERC channels and also over the website. And yes, and I hope you enjoy fabric8. Thanks. Are there any questions? No. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the rest of Devoxx as well.